It started with a gut feeling. It always does, doesn't it? Some imperceptible shift in tone, an unusual softness in her voice when she'd say she was going out for lunch with a friend. It was the kind of softness you only notice if you've spent years hearing the sharp edges of someone's voice, edges you thought you had dulled over a lifetime of devotion. My wife Laura and I had been married for 8 years. That is 8 years of quiet morning coffees, whispered dreams, and the silent, comfortable understanding that comes from knowing someone completely. We spent 8 years building a life of simple habits, of shared glances over the kitchen island, and of a deep trust that I believed was unbreakable. I thought we were solid. Sure, we had our disagreements, but I choked it up to the natural wear and tear of a long life built together. We were comfortable, or so I believed. But looking back, comfort is a dangerous thing. It makes you blind to the subtle shifts in the air, the tiny cracks in the foundation that start to splinter long before the walls actually collapse. And then, one ordinary evening, the entire illusion shattered, not with a loud bang, but with the quiet vibration of a phone resting on a couch cushion. It was a simple late-night text. Her phone was sitting on the couch right beside me while she was in the kitchen pouring a glass of water. The screen lit up in the dim light, displaying a preview of a message from an unrecognized number. It read, "Can't stop thinking about today." It was a short sentence, but it felt like a physical blow. When she came back and I asked her about it, she didn't panic. She just brushed it off with a quick, nervous laugh, telling me it was nothing, just a group chat, and that I knew how girls could be. I nodded, pretending to accept it, but I didn't press her further. That night, lying in bed beside her, I stared at the dark ceiling. The silence in the room felt incredibly heavy. I knew in my chest that something was wrong, something deeply, fundamentally wrong. Over the next few weeks, those lunch dates became more frequent, and her explanations grew increasingly vague. The warmth in our home was evaporating, replaced by an awkward, polite distance. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid, but the doubt was a poison, slowly eating away at my peace of mind. I am not proud of what I did next, but desperation drives you to places you never thought you would go. One afternoon, when she left her phone unattended on the counter, I went through it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type in her passcode. The texts I found weren't just suggestive, they were explicit, leaving absolutely no room for doubt. Her friend was a colleague named Eric. But what hurt the most wasn't the physical betrayal. It was the emotional intimacy dripping from every single sentence. They were sharing the kind of deep, vulnerable connection that we used to share, the very connection I thought was still ours. I sat at my desk at work, staring blankly at spreadsheets, feeling the phantom burn of those texts lingering behind my eyes. I couldn't focus on anything else. I felt a sudden, violent rush of nausea, followed by a cold, crushing wave of humiliation. My wife, my Laura, was having an affair. For an entire week, I carried this agonizing knowledge in total silence. I went to work, sat across from her at dinner, and watched her smile, trying to decide what to do. Confront her? Pack my bags and slip away? Beg her to explain? In the end, I did none of those things. Instead, I did something completely foreign to my nature. I planned. I started with some quiet research. A few deep dives into social media revealed that Eric was a sales representative at her company, and more importantly, he was married. I found his wife, Christine, on Facebook. She was a petite brunette with kind, gentle eyes, holding their 2 young children. My heart broke for her, but my sympathy didn't stop me from moving forward. I needed hard, undeniable proof, so I hired a private investigator named Frank. Frank was a seasoned professional with a rugged, bulldog face and a no-nonsense attitude. Within days, he delivered exactly what I needed. The photos Frank captured showed them leaving a hotel together, their arms brushed against each other, faces glowing with laughter. He even captured a shot of them kissing in her car. It was devastating, but it was the key. With the proof in hand, I reached out to Christine. My message was simple and respectful, attaching the photos. An hour later, her response came back. It was a single sentence. "Thank you for telling me." The ball was rolling, and I was no longer in control of where it would stop. But I had one last card to play. I wanted Laura to see what her betrayal had wrought, to feel the true, unvarnished weight of her choices. I invited her to lunch at home, calling it a date for just the two of us. She seemed relieved, almost eager, likely thinking my sudden attentiveness meant I suspected nothing. Little did she know it was simply the calm before the storm. When the day of the lunch arrived, I set the table with meticulous care. I laid out a crisp white tablecloth, our finest silver, and poured 2 glasses of red wine. I folded the napkins into perfect triangles, matching the cold geometric precision of my planning. Every detail had to be flawless. On the surface, it looked like an attempt at rekindling our romance. In reality, it was a stage. The centerpiece of the table wasn't flowers, but a plain manila envelope filled with every piece of evidence Frank had gathered. When Laura walked in, her cheeks flushed from her supposed lunch date, she stopped cold. Her eyes darted from the table to the envelope. She asked what it was, her voice shaky. I didn't answer. I just gestured for her to sit down. Reluctantly, she complied, her smile completely vanishing. I slid the envelope across the table. "Open it," I said. She hesitated, then opened it, her jaw tightening as she sifting through the photos and printed text messages. She began to stammer that she could explain, but her voice lacked all conviction. I leaned back, my voice calm but razor sharp, asking her what she could possibly explain. The lies? Sneaking around with a married man? Treating our marriage as disposable? As she broke down sobbing, mumbling apologies that meant nothing, I dropped the next bombshell. I told her I had spoken to Christine and that she knew everything. Laura's eyes widened in sheer horror. At that exact moment, there was a firm knock at the door. Her head whipped around in fear. I stood up and opened it to reveal Christine, her eyes blazing with anger, and right behind her stood Eric, looking terrified. The confrontation that followed in our living room was raw, loud, and incredibly ugly. Christine unleashed years of built-up frustration, while Laura and Eric stood there like broken shells. The fallout was swift. Laura packed her bags that evening. I filed for divorce the next day, and Christine did the same. Eric lost his job when the evidence was sent to their employer. Rebuilding my life wasn't easy. There were nights of deep grief. But a year later, I am happier than I have been in years, running, in therapy, and reclaiming my power.